She was a nurse, drowning in secrets. He was a powerful CEO, haunted by a love he thought he'd lost. When Elena accidentally stumbled into Julian's life again, a chain of explosive revelations unraveled. Hidden children, betrayal, sabotage, and a fight for survival that would test the limits of love and loyalty. Can two broken hearts heal the past and build a future together? Or will the darkness win? Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss more heart-stirring stories like this one. It was just past 9 p.m. at WestCare Medical Center in Portland, and the sterile hallways hummed with fluorescent light and quiet footsteps. Elena Moore moved through them with practiced grace, the kind that came from years of staying unnoticed. At 29, she was the kind of nurse who spoke softly, smiled politely, and kept her world tightly folded around her. Her chestnut brown hair was tied in a no-nonsense braid, her gray-blue eyes hidden behind smudged glasses. She wore navy scrubs, her name badge clipped neatly over her heart, but the weight she carried ran far deeper than any shift or title could express. Elena lived in constant motion, balancing 12-hour shifts with endless phone calls to her mother's care facility and nightly lullabies to her 5-year-old daughter, Lila. Medical bills stacked like bricks around her life, ever since her mother's diagnosis of early-onset Parkinson's. Every dollar she earned disappeared into treatments, rent, and whatever school supplies Lila needed that month. Romance? Rest? Both were distant memories. She didn't have time for love, not since the day she'd walked away from Julian West, the only man who'd ever known how her laughter really sounded. But tonight was different. A supervisor had handed her a sealed manila folder and a set of instructions she couldn't refuse. Deliver the quarterly patient report to the new CEO's office, personally. Elena blinked at the assignment. She wasn't administrative staff, she wasn't even on the same floor. Still, she nodded, clutching the folder tighter than necessary as she entered the executive elevator, watching the light blink past floor after floor until it stopped at 19. Her palms were slick. Her heartbeat tapped out a rhythm of old fears. She hadn't met the new CEO yet, only heard rumors. Julian West, 31, a tech mogul turned healthcare reformer. Ambitious, brilliant, ruthless. When the doors opened, Elena hesitated. The air on the executive floor smelled of leather and lemon polish, a far cry from antiseptic and overcooked cafeteria food. The halls were carpeted, silent, empty. At the end of the corridor stood a heavy oak door etched with gold letters, Julian West, CEO. She swallowed and knocked once, twice. No answer. She waited, then pressed her ear to the door. A sound. Running water. Maybe someone had left a faucet on. It wouldn't be the first time. Her nurse's instincts kicked in. She reached for the handle, the folder clutched under her arm. The office was dim, lit only by a desk lamp casting long shadows across polished wood and gleaming furniture. Papers sat in neat stacks. A sleek laptop lay closed beside a half-empty tumbler of something amber. But the sound of water grew louder, drawing her toward a door on the right. Ajar, with wisps of steam curling out like breath. "Hello?" she called, her voice barely a whisper. No response. She pushed the door open a little farther and stepped into the modern bathroom beyond, and froze. Under a rainfall shower stood a man, tall, broad-shouldered, water cascading down his back as he leaned into the heat. His dark hair was slicked back, his eyes closed. He didn't see her yet. Elena's breath caught, her cheeks flushing crimson. She staggered backward, dropping the folder. It hit the floor with a thud. His eyes flew open, sharp and startled. He turned, and their eyes locked. Her heart stopped. "Elena," he said, more breath than voice. She didn't answer. Couldn't. The air collapsed around her, her legs moving before her mind caught up. She fled, the office door slamming shut behind her. Inside, Julian West stepped out of the shower, water dripping down his chest as he wrapped a towel around his waist. His gaze dropped to the folder and the name written in quick, familiar script, Elena Moore. His jaw clenched. It couldn't be. But something in him stirred. Memory, regret, something unfinished. She was gone, but not forgotten. Julian couldn't sleep that night. He stood in his high-rise apartment, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Portland's glittering skyline, the city alive below him, while his mind spiraled with the image of her, Elena Moore. He said her name aloud, barely believing it. It had been 6 years. 6 long years since she'd vanished from his life without a word, without a trace. And now she had reappeared in the most surreal, intimate way imaginable, accidentally walking in on him, unannounced, as if the universe had decided subtlety was overrated. He remembered the way she looked tonight. Startled, flushed, beautiful even beneath the hospital lights and loose scrubs. She'd changed. Her hair was darker now, her features sharpened by time and something heavier. Grief, maybe. Still, he knew those eyes. And the moment they met his, he felt the same quiet chaos she'd once stirred in him. At the hospital the next day, Elena moved through her rounds like a ghost. She avoided eye contact, kept her head down, and worked with robotic precision. But inside, she was unraveling. Every beep, every clipboard, every step reminded her of what she'd seen and who she had seen. Julian West, the man she'd once loved with every piece of her. The man she left for the sake of a future that was never hers. And now he was here, successful, powerful, and more dangerously compelling than ever. Worse yet, he was curious. By the time she reached the nurse's break room, her hands trembled as she poured coffee into a paper cup. She told herself it didn't matter. He wouldn't recognize her, not like this. The glasses, the hair, the time. But even as she repeated that lie in her mind, her heart whispered another truth. He'd said her name. Julian, meanwhile, sat in his sleek office, staring at her file. He'd pulled it under the pretense of reviewing department productivity, but the truth gnawed at him. He needed to know more. He traced his fingers over her name, feeling the way it lingered like a ghost in his memory. Elena had been the quiet girl who used to sit under trees with medical textbooks, who blushed when he brushed her hand, who kissed like she was scared it might be her last chance. Then one day, she was gone. No letter, no explanation, just silence. His mother, Victoria West, had always hated her. "She doesn't belong in our world," she'd once snapped, handing Julian a plane ticket to New York and a 6-month internship he hadn't asked for. He'd fought back then, even planned to propose, until Elena disappeared overnight. He hadn't seen her since. Until now. Chloe Langford, Julian's fiancée, noticed the shift. She always did. Her instincts were razor sharp, owned from years of keeping herself at the center of every room. She arrived at Westcare that afternoon, heels clicking, a designer tote slung casually over her arm. She found Julian distracted, flipping through files he never used to care about. And when she caught him glancing out the window toward the ER wing below, her stomach turned with quiet suspicion. Later that night, in the penthouse she shared with Julian, Chloe made a call to her private investigator. "There's a nurse, Elena Moore. I want everything on her," she said, her voice smooth but venom-laced. "Start with debt, family, children, whatever she's hiding." Back at her apartment, Elena knelt beside Lila's bed, brushing soft curls from her daughter's forehead. The little girl was warm again. Another low-grade fever. Elena's gut twisted, but she forced a smile. "Story time?" Lila whispered. "Of course, baby," Elena said softly, opening a worn picture book. But her eyes were distant, haunted by a man from her past who now threatened the fragile future she'd built, and she didn't know it yet. But the cracks in her carefully guarded life had already begun to widen. The fever wouldn't break. Elena sat in a stiff plastic chair beside Lila's hospital bed, her back aching from 12 hours on her feet and another 6 spent holding her daughter's tiny hand. Lila's skin burned beneath the IV bandage, her little face pale and waxy, lips cracked despite constant sips of Pedialyte. Bruises had begun to bloom across her arms and legs, faint and splotchy like ghosts. Elena had seen this before, in textbooks, in training, and yet nothing could prepare her for seeing it in her child. She begged the pediatrician for answers, her voice cracking under the weight of exhaustion and fear. Tests were run, blood drawn, machines beeped with maddening rhythm. Then came the words that shattered her world. Hemophagocytic lymphohistiocytosis. HLH, a rare immune disease that attacked from within, like a firestorm. Lila would need a bone marrow transplant or umbilical cord blood from a biological sibling. Elena's world tilted. She had no siblings for Lila, no backup plan, no time. The news echoed in her head as she stumbled out of the ward, blindly navigating toward the break room. Her hands trembled as she poured a cup of coffee she wouldn't drink. The edges of the paper cup crumpled in her grip. Everything inside her screamed. She had to think. Had to move. But all she could feel was panic. Julian found her there, staring into the steam like it might offer an answer. "You okay?" he asked gently, something softer than usual in his voice. Elena didn't look at him. She couldn't. Just tired, she murmured, the lie automatic. But he saw it now, the fragility, the weight she carried, the desperation bleeding through every movement. A photo had fallen from her locker earlier that day, and he'd picked it up before she could. A little girl with wide eyes and chestnut curls, she looked familiar. Too familiar. Julian didn't press her. Not yet, but the feeling clawed at him, relentless. That child, those eyes, his mother's eyes, his eyes. He made a call later that night, using a private lab contact to run discrete DNA comparisons. A blood sample from a school permission form Elena had once submitted, a hair strand from the locker photo. It felt invasive. But the alternative, doubt, silence, was worse. As he waited for the results, something else festered in the background. Chloe, the investigator she'd hired, delivered a report that made her stomach knot. Elena Moore was drowning in medical debt. Her mother was chronically ill. She had a daughter, 5 years old. No named father. Chloe's heart pounded as she flipped through the dossier. It didn't take a genius to do the math. She didn't confront Julian, not yet. She knew better than that. Instead, she got creative. A favor here, a conversation there. One of the night shift nurses owed a debt. A big one. Chloe made her an offer. The next day, Elena worked her shift like a ghost. She avoided Julian's gaze, avoided hope, avoided the gnawing ache in her gut. When her stomach turned mid-shift, she thought it was stress. When the cramping began, she told herself it was nothing. But hours later, she collapsed in the ER, blood blooming through her scrubs, her body shuddering in agony. Doctors rushed in, words blurred. She caught fragments, pregnancy, miscarriage, too late. She woke up alone, hollow. The doctor's voice was flat. You lost the baby. Elena's scream cracked through the ward like glass, sharp and uncontainable. Down the hall, Julian froze as the sound hit him. His gut clenched. Something terrible had happened. He ran, but by the time he reached her room, it was already over. She was curled into herself, broken, unreachable. And Julian, unaware he'd just lost the second child he never knew he had, stood at the doorway, helpless as the woman he once loved drowned in grief he didn't yet understand. The world hadn't stopped spinning after Elena lost the baby, but for her, everything else had. She went back to work too soon, moving like a shadow through hospital corridors, her body present but her spirit gutted. The miscarriage had left her raw, and the silence that followed only deepened the wound. No one asked questions. They all assumed it had been an accident, one of life's quiet tragedies. No one suspected it was anything else. But Julian did. He'd been waiting for the lab results when he got the call that Elena had collapsed. He hadn't been allowed in her room, and she hadn't spoken to him since. But when the results finally arrived, they cracked something open in him that could never be sealed again. Maddie, Elena's daughter, was his. The report was conclusive. DNA didn't lie. And suddenly, the photo from her locker, the child's eyes, the way Elena had run from him, it all made sense. The past he thought had ended years ago was alive, breathing in the form of a little girl he had never known. His daughter. His flesh and blood. He sat at his desk for hours, unable to move, the pages trembling in his hands. But even as the truth took shape, chaos brewed elsewhere. Victoria West's death had shocked everyone. It happened the same week as Elena's miscarriage. One moment, Julian's mother was in her office demanding boardroom precision. The next, she was found unconscious, a bottle of heart medication clutched in her hand, dead before paramedics arrived. At first, no one questioned it, a tragic medical error, but a janitor mentioned seeing Elena in the office earlier that day. Then a vial surfaced, hidden in Julian's trash can, one laced with a counterfeit compound. Elena's fingerprints were on it. The accusation was swift and brutal. Security pulled Elena from her shift in front of everyone. She didn't fight. She was too numb to care. In the interrogation room, her voice barely worked. I didn't do anything, she whispered, but the evidence said otherwise. Julian didn't know what to believe. He'd spent the night rereading her file, replaying the past, the letters signed by Mr. Gray. The name he'd used to covertly support her after discovering her mother's situation years ago. He'd thought he was helping from a distance. He never knew it was her. Now, with her accused of poisoning his mother and hiding the truth about Maddie, the weight of betrayal crushed him. But there were more betrayals yet to come. Sasha Moore had been watching from the sidelines. waiting for her moment. Elena's half-sister, bitter and cunning, saw her chance the moment Elena was taken in. With their father Ray, she hatched a plan. They knew about Maddie now, knew that the girl was worth something. They kidnapped her after school, lured her with a smile and a promise of ice cream, then vanished into the city's outskirts. They used a burner phone to leave a message on Elena's voicemail. "We have your kid," Ray growled. "10 million from your CEO boyfriend, or she disappears forever." Elena didn't hear the message. She was still being held, her phone dead, her heart in ruins. It was Jasper, her best friend, who pieced it together. When he realized Maddie was missing, he didn't wait. He drove straight to Julian's house and pounded on the door. "They took her," Jasper yelled, his eyes wild. "Sasha and Ray. It's a ransom." Julian's blood ran cold. He unlocked the door to Elena's temporary holding room himself and burst in. She spun toward him, eyes wild. "Where is she?" she cried, already sensing something was wrong. Julian looked at her, the heartbreak on his face unmistakable. "Is Maddie mine?" he asked quietly. She froze. The question pierced straight through her. She couldn't lie, but her lips refused to move. Jasper stepped in, his voice firm. "Yes, she is. Elena didn't tell you because of Victoria. Your mother bought her silence." The truth slammed into Julian like a tidal wave. His daughter had been taken. His past and present were colliding, unraveling. And the only woman he'd ever loved was at the center of it all. There was no more room for doubt. Only action. Rain lashed against the windshield as Jasper sped down the freeway, wipers barely keeping pace with the storm. Elena sat beside him, fists clenched in her lap, teeth chattering from more than just cold. In the back seat, Julian's voice cut through the tension as he barked instructions into his phone. "Track the signal. I want eyes on that warehouse now." He glanced at Elena, his expression tight with guilt and something deeper, determination. "I'm not losing her," he said. Elena didn't respond. Her heart felt like glass, fractured, sharp, ready to shatter. Maddie was out there, scared, alone. The thought made her stomach turn. She couldn't stop replaying every moment, how she'd trusted Sasha for even a second, how she hadn't seen it coming. In the warehouse on Portland's industrial edge, Maddie curled up in a corner, shivering in her thin jacket. The space was damp and dark, lit by a single flickering bulb. Ray paced with a burner phone clutched in one hand, muttering about time and money. Sasha leaned against a stack of crates, checking her nails like it was just another boring evening. "She's just a kid," Maddie whispered, trying not to cry. "Yeah, and she's our ticket out of this dump," Sasha sneered. Back in the car, Julian's team finally triangulated the signal. "They're here," he said. Jasper didn't wait for permission, he floored the gas. They arrived minutes later, headlights cutting through fog. Julian's private security team moved in fast, coordinated and silent. Flashlights swept across the rusted doors, and then, bang, the doors were breached. Chaos erupted. Ray grabbed a metal pipe, lunging wildly before two guards tackled him to the floor. Sasha shrieked, trying to run, but another guard caught her by the arm. Maddie screamed as the room exploded with noise. But then, Maddie. Elena burst through the doorway, sprinting across the floor. "Mama." Maddie ran into her arms, sobbing. Elena held her tight, both of them shaking as the danger dissolved around them. She kissed her daughter's forehead, breathing in her scent like it was oxygen. Julian stood frozen, watching them. His chest rose and fell with a weight he couldn't describe. His daughter. His family. The moment burned into him like a brand. Later that night, back at the hospital, Maddie was stabilized. Her fever broke, but her immune system was still fragile. Doctors moved cautiously. Elena stayed by her side, brushing back sweat-damp curls, whispering soothing words. Julian didn't leave either. He hovered, quiet but present, never more than a few feet away. The next morning, he confronted Chloe. She didn't deny it. When Julian showed her the nurse's confession, the drug, the miscarriage, the planted evidence, her expression crumbled. "I didn't mean for Dorothy to die," she whispered. "I just wanted Elena gone." Julian's voice was ice. "You cost me a child. You almost killed another." He handed over the evidence to the police himself. Chloe was arrested that afternoon. Her name splashed across local news as headlines screamed scandal. Attempted murder, tampering, manslaughter. Her empire collapsed overnight. Elena watched it unfold from the breakroom TV. Her breath caught, not from satisfaction, but from relief. The nightmare was ending. But there were still pieces left to pick up. Julian wasn't done. He turned his sights on Ray and Sasha. With the help of his legal team, he uncovered Ray's side business, counterfeit pharmaceuticals sold on the black market, responsible for dozens of patient deaths, including his own mother's. Sasha had helped launder the profits. Ray was indicted on multiple counts of fraud and manslaughter. Sasha's inheritance disappeared. Her social circle abandoned her. Public disgrace followed like a shadow. Julian held a press conference outside the hospital, speaking with clarity and conviction. Ray Moore endangered lives for profit. He'll be held accountable for my mother, for Maddie, and for every family hurt by his greed. Inside, Elena sat with Maddie, fingers intertwined, eyes watching the screen. Days later, with the chaos behind them, Julian joined them in her room. He knelt beside Elena, his voice low. "I didn't trust you. I failed you." She looked at him, tears in her eyes, but something warmer too. "We both lost time, but we still have now." He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't let go. Life often tests us through the heaviest storms, breaking our hearts, shaking our faith, and forcing us to face the deepest parts of ourselves. Elena and Julian's story reminds us that true love is not fragile. It endures, even when buried beneath years of hurt, betrayal, and silence. It teaches us that forgiveness is not forgetting the pain but choosing to rebuild despite it, brick by fragile brick. Elena's resilience shows that no matter how life tries to crush you under the weight of fear and despair, you can rise. Julian's redemption proves that admitting your mistakes and fighting for what truly matters is the greatest strength a person can have. Together, they learned that family isn't just built by blood. It's built by trust, by second chances, and by never giving up when the people you love need you most. Even in the darkest chapters, hope flickers quietly, waiting for you to reach out and hold it tight. And when you do, when you refuse to surrender, you discover that the life waiting for you on the other side is richer, deeper, and more beautiful than you ever dared to dream. So wherever you are in your journey, remember, healing is messy, love is hard, but both are always worth it. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments. We'd love to know. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any more powerful stories like this one. Thank you for being here.